What happens when one of Britain's most celebrated actors sits down for what should be a friendly chat, only to be ambushed by a host who refuses to let him speak? In just 30 seconds, a simple question spirals into one of the most explosive confrontations ever witnessed on daytime television. And it only takes one outrageous comment for Gary Oldman to make a decision that will stun everyone watching. The Loose Women set looks like any other day. The cameras are rolling, the audience is settled in their seats, and the panel is ready. Denise Welch sits at the head of the table, flanked by Ruth Langsford, Nadia Sawalha, and Janet Street Porter. Gary Oldman walks onto the stage to warm applause. He's dressed casually, relaxed, smiling. This is supposed to be an easy interview, a light conversation about his latest film, maybe some stories from his incredible career. Everyone expects a good time. But from the very first moment Gary sits down, something feels different. There's a tension in the air that the audience can't quite place yet. Denise Welch starts with what sounds like a compliment. Gary Oldman, everyone. Now, Gary, you've played so many incredible characters over the years. Villains, heroes, everything in between. But I have to ask, do you ever worry that people can't separate you from some of those darker roles you've taken on? Gary smiles, ready to give a thoughtful answer. Well, Denise, I think that's actually a sign of... But he doesn't get to finish. Denise cuts him off. Because I have to say, watching some of your performances, there's something quite unsettling about how easily you slip into these really disturbing characters. It makes you wonder what someone has to tap into to go to those places, doesn't it? The smile on Gary's face falters slightly. He tries again. I think any actor would tell you that it's about understanding human nature and... Yes, but human nature is one thing, Denise interrupts again, leaning forward with an intensity that seems unnecessary for a daytime chat show. We're talking about portraying real darkness here, real evil. And you do it so convincingly. I mean, that must come from somewhere, mustn't it? There's an uncomfortable shift in the energy. Ruth Langsford glances at Denise with a look that says she's not sure where this is going. Nadia Sawalha shifts in her seat. The audience is silent, waiting. Gary takes a breath. His voice is calm, measured. I think you might be conflating the craft of acting with personal character. And that's a dangerous road to go down. Acting is about empathy, imagination, and technique. It's not about... But surely, Denise cuts across him yet again, and now her tone has an edge to it, almost accusatory. Surely there's a part of you that enjoys playing these types of characters? The violent ones? The manipulative ones? Nobody forces you to take these roles, Gary. You choose them. Gary's jaw tightens. You can see him making a conscious effort to remain professional. I choose roles that challenge me as an artist and that tell important stories. If you're suggesting that, I'm not suggesting anything, Denise says, but her words say otherwise. I'm simply asking a question that I think a lot of people at home might be wondering. When you've spent decades playing killers and criminals and abusers, what does that say about what interests you? Janet Street Porter finally speaks up, clearly uncomfortable. Denise, I think we should let Gary actually answer a question before we... But Denise holds up a hand to silence her, never taking her eyes off Gary. No, I think this is important. Gary is a public figure. He's been in the industry for years. He can handle a real conversation. Can't you, Gary? Gary's expression has changed now. The friendly, relaxed demeanor from when he walked out is gone. He looks directly at Denise. A real conversation involves listening, which doesn't seem to be happening here. The audience murmurs. This is not the lighthearted interview they signed up for. Denise laughs, but it's a cold sound. Oh, so now I'm not listening. I'm asking you direct questions about your career choices. If you're uncomfortable answering them, maybe that tells us something. I'm not uncomfortable, Gary replies, his voice steady but firm. I'm confused as to why you've invited me here, if your intention was to interrogate me rather than have a conversation. Ruth tries to interject, her voice diplomatic. Perhaps we could talk about Gary's new film. I'm sure everyone would love to hear about. In a moment, Ruth, Denise snaps, cutting her off without even looking at her. Her focus is entirely on Gary. I want to understand something first. You've made a fortune playing these reprehensible characters. You've built a career on it. And yet, when someone asks you a perfectly reasonable question about it, you get defensive. Why is that? Gary leans back in his chair, and you can see him reassessing the situation. I'm not defensive. I'm simply pointing out that you're not asking reasonable questions. You're making accusations dressed up as questions. There's a difference. Accusations? Denise's voice rises slightly. I haven't accused you of anything, unless there's something you think I should be accusing you of. The implication hangs in the air like poison. Nadia Sawalha looks genuinely shocked. She tries to step in. Denise, come on. This is getting a bit what, Nadia? Denise turns to her fellow panelist, her tone sharp. A bit too honest? A bit too real? Isn't that what we're supposed to do here? Have real conversations? Nadia doesn't back down. Real conversations don't involve attacking your guests before they've even had a chance to speak. I'm not attacking anyone, Denise insists, turning back to Gary. I'm asking legitimate questions about the choices he's made in his career. Gary, surely you can see how some people might find it concerning that someone would be drawn to playing such dark, violent roles over and over again? Gary's patience is wearing thin. You can hear it in his voice now, the controlled frustration. What I find concerning is a host who invites someone onto her show under the pretense of a friendly interview, and then uses it as a platform to make baseless insinuations about their character. That's what I find concerning. Baseless? Denise's eyes flash. You're the one who chose to play these roles. You're the one who's made millions portraying violence and abuse. Those are facts, Gary, not insinuations. And I'm an actor, Gary responds, his voice rising slightly now. That's my job. By your logic, every actor who's ever played a villain must be suspect. Anthony Hopkins, Javier Bardem, Kathy Bates. Should we question all of them too? Or is it just me you've decided to target today? The audience is completely silent now. This has gone far beyond uncomfortable. This is a full-blown confrontation. Ruth tries one more time to salvage things. Look, I think maybe we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. Gary, why don't you tell us about working with the director on your new film? I heard there were some really interesting... Ruth, please, Denise interrupts, and there's real anger in her voice now. Stop trying to change the subject. Gary brought up an interesting point. He wants to know why I'm asking him these questions. Well, Gary, I'll tell you why. Because I think the public has a right to know what kind of person they're supporting when they buy a ticket to your films. The words land like a slap. The panel goes completely still. Gary stares at Denise in disbelief. What kind of person? Gary repeats slowly. What exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything, Denise says, but her words contradict themselves. I'm saying that actions speak louder than words. And your actions, your choices, the roles you gravitate towards, they paint a picture. And it's not a particularly pleasant picture. Janet Street Porter has had enough. Denise, this is completely out of order. You can't just... I can ask whatever questions I want, Denise snaps at her. This is my segment. And if Gary has a problem with being asked about his career, then maybe he shouldn't have agreed to come on the show. Gary shakes his head slowly. This has nothing to do with my career. You're not asking about my work. You're making personal attacks and trying to disguise them as journalism. It's transparent and it's cheap. Cheap? Denise's voice goes up another notch. You want to talk about cheap? Let's talk about how you've built an entire career on exploiting violence and trauma for entertainment. Let's talk about how you've profited from portraying the worst of humanity. That seems pretty cheap to me. That's enough, Gary says, and there's a finality in his voice. This is absurd. But Denise isn't done. She's locked in now, committed to whatever point she's trying to make. No, what's absurd is sitting across from someone who's made millions, playing abusers and murderers, and pretending like there's nothing worth examining there. What's absurd is the way you're trying to dodge a simple question about why you're so drawn to these types of roles. I've tried to answer your questions, Gary says, his voice tight with controlled anger. Multiple times, but you don't want answers. You want a confession for something I haven't done. You want me to somehow apologize for being an actor who takes his craft seriously. Your craft, Denise repeats mockingly. Is that what we're calling it? Nadia actually gasps. Denise, that's completely uncalled for. Is it? Denise challenges. Not just Gary now, but her entire panel. Is it really? Or are we all just supposed to sit here and pretend like there's nothing odd about someone who seems to enjoy playing predators and psychopaths? Gary stands up. The movement is sudden enough that it silences Denise mid-breath. He looks down at her, and when he speaks, his voice is cold and clear. I came here today as a courtesy. I came here to talk about my work, to have what I thought would be a pleasant conversation. Instead, I've been subjected to what can only be described as a character assassination, based on nothing more than your own twisted perceptions of what acting is. Sit down, Gary, Denise orders, but there's uncertainty in her voice now. This isn't going the way she planned. No, Gary says simply. I don't think I will. I don't think I'm going to sit here and allow you to continue to insult me and my profession. Ruth reaches out. Gary, please, I'm sure if we just... Ruth, with all due respect, Gary says, and his tone softens slightly when he addresses her. This has nothing to do with you or Nadia or Janet. You've all tried to be reasonable, but I will not sit here and be treated like this. He unclips his microphone and sets it on the table. The action is deliberate, final. Denise finds her voice again, and it comes out defensive now, aggressive. So you're just going to walk off? You're going to run away when someone asks you difficult questions? That's very telling, Gary. Gary pauses, looks at her one more time. The only thing that's telling here is your behavior. I've been in this industry for over 40 years. I've done hundreds of interviews. I've been asked tough questions, challenging questions, questions that made me think. But I have never, and I mean never, been treated with such blatant disrespect and unprofessionalism. Oh, please, Denise scoffs. Don't play the victim here. You're a wealthy, successful, white man. I think you can handle a few hard questions. Hard questions? Gary's voice rises for the first time. You call what you've been doing asking hard questions? You've spent the last 10 minutes making thinly veiled accusations about my character based on nothing but the fictional roles I've played in movies. That's not journalism. That's not even good television. That's just mean-spirited nonsense. The audience is riveted. Some of them look uncomfortable. Others look angry on Gary's behalf. A few are recording on their phones. Janet speaks up, her voice firm. Gary's right, Denise. This has been completely inappropriate from the start. You ambushed him. I didn't ambush anyone, Denise protests, but she's losing control of the situation, and she knows it. I asked legitimate questions about... Stop, Gary interrupts. Just stop. You can tell yourself whatever you need to tell yourself to justify this, but we both know what you did here today. And so does everyone watching. He takes a step back from the table. Denise makes one last attempt to regain authority. If you walk off this set right now, Gary, you're proving my point. You're showing everyone that you can't handle. I'm not proving anything, Gary says quietly, but his words cut through her bluster like a knife. Except perhaps that I have enough self-respect not to sit here and be your punching bag for whatever personal issues you're working through. The impact of his words is visible. Denise's face flushes red. "How dare you?" she starts, but Gary is already turning away. Ruth tries one final time. "Gary, please, let's just take a breath and..." But Gary is done. "Ruth, you seem like a lovely person. Nadia, Janet, thank you for trying to maintain some sanity here, but I'm not going to stay somewhere I'm clearly not welcome." He walks toward the edge of the set. Denise is on her feet now, her voice shrill. "Fine. Walk away. Run away like you always do when things get real." Gary stops, turns back. "Like I always do. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. That's the whole point. You've created this entire narrative in your head based on characters I've played in films, and you've decided that's who I am. That's not real, Denise. Those are characters. Fiction. Do you understand the difference?" "I understand that you're being incredibly disrespectful right now," Denise shoots back. The irony of her statement isn't lost on anyone. Several audience members actually laugh in disbelief. Gary shakes his head, a sad smile on his face. The lack of self-awareness is remarkable. Truly. "Get out then," Denise shouts, abandoning any pretense of professionalism now. "If you can't handle an honest conversation, then leave." "I can handle honest conversations," Gary says calmly. "What I can't handle is whatever this was supposed to be. Good luck with the rest of your show." And with that, he walks off the set. The cameras capture every step. Behind him, the panel sits in stunned silence. Denise is standing, breathing hard, her face flushed. Ruth has her head in her hands. Nadia is staring at Denise with something close to anger. Janet is shaking her head slowly. The audience doesn't know whether to clap or sit in silence. A few people start to applaud Gary as he disappears backstage, but it's scattered, uncertain. Denise sits back down heavily. She tries to compose herself, tries to reclaim control. "Well," she says, her voice shaking slightly, "I think that shows you exactly the kind of person Gary Oldman really is. Can't handle a few tough questions without throwing a tantrum and walking off." But nobody is buying it. Not the panel, not the audience, not even Denise herself, if the look on her face is any indication. Ruth finds her voice, and it's cold. "That's not what happened here, Denise, and you know it." "Excuse me?" Denise turns to her. "You heard me," Ruth says firmly. "You ambushed that man. You attacked him from the moment he sat down. That wasn't journalism or good interviewing or anything remotely professional. That was a hit job." "I was asking questions," Denise insists weakly. "You were making accusations," Nadia corrects her. "There's a difference. A huge difference." Janet nods. "I've been doing this job for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like that. You crossed a line, Denise. Multiple lines, actually." Denise looks around at her fellow panelists, and you can see the realization dawning on her face. This didn't go the way she wanted. Instead of exposing Gary Oldman, she's exposed herself. "I think we need to go to a break," Ruth says, looking at the camera. "We'll be right back." But the damage is done. As the cameras cut away, the whispered conversations begin. In the audience, backstage, among the crew. Everyone is talking about what they just witnessed. Denise sits at the table, isolated now even among her own colleagues. Ruth, Nadia, and Janet are talking among themselves, deliberately not including her. The energy has completely shifted. Someone from production comes over, whispers something urgently to Denise. She argues back, her voice low but intense. The producer shakes his head, says something else. Denise's face goes pale. When the cameras come back on, it's Ruth who speaks, not Denise. "We want to apologize for what you just witnessed," Ruth says, her voice professional but strained. "That is not how we conduct interviews on this show, and it's not representative of the respect we have for our guests." Denise starts to speak, but Ruth continues, talking over her. Gary Oldman is a respected actor with an incredible body of work, and he deserved better than what he received here today. The apology hangs in the air. Denise is silent now, staring at the table in front of her. Nadia adds, "Acting is a craft that requires actors to take on all sorts of roles, including difficult and challenging ones. That doesn't reflect on their personal character. It reflects on their skill and their courage as artists." Janet finishes the thought. And ambushing someone with personal attacks disguised as questions is not what this show is about. Or at least it shouldn't be. The subtle emphasis on the last sentence is not lost on anyone. Denise finally speaks, but her voice lacks its earlier confidence. "I was simply trying to have an honest conversation about—" "No, you weren't," Ruth interrupts, and the firmness in her voice is unmistakable. And I think we all know that. Let's move on to our next segment. The show continues, but the atmosphere is poisonous. Denise barely speaks for the rest of the episode. When she does, her comments are met with short responses from the other panelists and uncomfortable silences. Backstage, Gary Oldman is preparing to leave the building. Staff members approach him, apologizing profusely. He's gracious in his responses, thanking them for their kindness, making it clear that he bears no ill will toward anyone except the person who orchestrated the ambush. One of the producers catches up with him at the exit. "Mr. Oldman, I am so sorry about what happened out there. That was completely unacceptable. We had no idea she was going to—" Gary holds up a hand. "It's all right. These things happen. Well, actually, no, they don't usually happen, but there's a first time for everything, I suppose. We'd love to have you back," the producer says quickly. "Maybe with a different host configuration. We could—" "Let's not worry about that right now," Gary says diplomatically. "I appreciate the offer, but I think I'll take a pass on any return visits for the foreseeable future." He leaves the building, and within hours, clips of the confrontation are spreading across social media. The response is overwhelmingly in Gary's favor. Comments flood in, praising his composure, his dignity, his refusal to be bullied. People share stories of meeting him, working with him, stories that paint a picture of a professional, kind, talented individual. The criticism of Denise is swift and harsh. Viewers, fellow journalists, even other daytime television hosts speak out against her behavior. Words like unprofessional, cruel, bullying, and shameful are used repeatedly. Back on the Loose Women set, the show limps to its conclusion. The final segment is awkward, with forced smiles and stilted conversation. When they finally sign off, Denise immediately stands and walks off the set without a word to her colleagues. In the green room, Ruth, Nadia, and Janet gather. Their conversation is quiet but intense. They're discussing what they witnessed, what it means, what comes next. "That was beyond inappropriate," Ruth says, shaking her head. "I've never been so embarrassed to be part of this show." "The way she kept cutting him off," Nadia adds. "Not letting him answer. Just attacking him over and over. And for what? Playing roles in movies? It was absurd." "It was cruel," Janet corrects. "Let's call it what it was. She was cruel to him, and for no reason that I could see. He came here in good faith, and she treated him like a criminal." They fall silent, each processing what they were part of. "Do you think he'll be okay?" Nadia asks quietly. "Gary Oldman?" Ruth says. "He's a professional. He's been in the industry forever. He'll be fine. His reputation will survive this." "But Denise?" She shakes her head. "I don't know." The truth of that statement settles over them. Whatever Denise thought she was going to accomplish today, it backfired spectacularly. Instead of exposing Gary Oldman as whatever she imagined him to be, she exposed herself as someone willing to abuse her platform and attack a guest who came on her show in good faith. The interview that was supposed to be a simple, pleasant chat about a new film became something else entirely. It became a case study in how not to conduct an interview, how not to treat a guest, How not to use your position as a host. For Gary Oldman, it became a demonstration of grace under fire, of dignity in the face of unwarranted attacks, of knowing when to walk away from a situation that has become untenable. He handled it exactly right. He tried to be reasonable, tried to engage in good faith, tried to steer the conversation back to professional territory. When it became clear that wasn't possible, when the attacks continued and the hostility escalated, he made the decision to remove himself from the situation. He didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't throw anything. He simply stated his case, explained his position, and left with his head held high. That's the kind of response that earns respect. That's the kind of behavior that people remember and admire. Not the shouting, not the accusations, not the attempts to tear someone down for no reason. The calm, measured, dignified refusal to participate in a circus. The entire confrontation lasted less than 15 minutes from start to finish. 15 minutes that will be replayed, analyzed, and discussed for days, weeks, maybe longer. 15 minutes that perfectly captured what happens when professional courtesy breaks down, when personal agendas override professional responsibilities, when someone forgets that their guests are human beings deserving of basic respect. Gary Oldman walked onto that set expecting a normal interview. He walked off that set having been subjected to one of the most bizarre and hostile interview environments imaginable. And through it all, he maintained his composure, his dignity, and his integrity. That's the story. Not the accusations, not the insinuations, not the attempts to paint him as something he's not. The story is how he responded to all of that with grace and strength. The story is how he refused to be bullied, refused to be made into a villain, refused to participate in whatever game Denise thought she was playing. In the end, actions speak louder than words, and the actions on that set spoke volumes about everyone involved. Gary Oldman showed the world what class looks like, what dignity looks like, what integrity looks like. And Denise? She showed the world what happens when you let your personal feelings override your professional responsibilities. What happens when you abuse your platform? What happens when you forget that your job is to create engaging, respectful, informative television, not to settle scores or work through your own issues at the expense of your guests? The cameras captured it all. Every moment of the escalating tension, every cutting remark, every interruption, every attempt by the other panelists to salvage the situation, and most importantly, every second of Gary Oldman's measured, dignified response and eventual departure. It's a moment that will be remembered, not because it was good television in the traditional sense, but because it was real, raw, uncomfortable, a glimpse behind the curtain at what happens when things go wrong, when someone steps over the line, when professionalism breaks down. And through it all, one person emerged with their reputation not just intact, but enhanced. Gary Oldman walked into that studio as a respected actor. He walked out as something more, a reminder that grace, dignity, and self-respect never go out of style. That standing up for yourself doesn't require aggression or hostility. That sometimes the strongest response is simply to say no more and walk away. That's the real story of what happened on the Loose Women set that day. Not a scandal about Gary Oldman, as Denise seemed to want to create, but a testament to his character and professionalism in the face of unwarranted hostility. And that's something worth talking about.